Well, I guess this craziness started back in 2010. I was on a business conference out in San Diego. I got into town the day before the conference and just went for a little ride and ended up in Oceanside, California. There was a big commotion going on down on the beach, and there was a race going on, and so I checked into it and found out about this thing called Race Across the West and Race Across America. I began studying it and decided I'd like to try it. 2011, I came back and tried Race Across the West. Really knew nothing about the race and the conditions, and never really done anything that long before. So I was a rookie racer, had a rookie crew, and it showed. We got into a lot of trouble early on, and I ended up in the hospital in Prescott, Arizona, and had to drop out of the race because I had such severe dehydration. But it made me pretty determined to come back and try it again, so we did that in 2012, and had success and made it to Durango. And then I thought, well, maybe I could do the big race, this Race Across America, the full country crossing, which you have to do in 12 days. So in 2013, I was going to try Race Across America, so the full country crossing, and I was beginning to train for that. But I had an accident in late fall of 2012. A dog ran out in front of me and I broke my collarbone. So I knew I wouldn't be able to be prepared for RAAM, but I wanted to stay connected with the race in some way. And what I decided to do was hooked up with my good friend Paul Hart, and we did Race Across the West again as a two-man team, and had a real good time, had real good success with that, and it kept me connected with the race, kept me connected with the training. And so I went out to RAAM with a lot of expectations of having a very successful ride. It would be an extreme challenge for me. I felt like I had to have the perfect race to be successful. I couldn't have any mishaps. But really was feeling very positive about that.
Ed, you've done RAW in the past 2 times, so what was the big push for you to come to RAAM?
Well, once you do RAW, you got to do RAAM, right? You got to move up, so that's what I'm doing, moving up.
What have you done to prepare for the difference in distance and magnitude?
Yeah, lost a lot of weight and need a little bit lighter weight to get up those hills that we have to cross, and a lot more training, a lot more intense training, and better diet. So I've done a lot of things to get me prepared.
Do you have a specific diet that you follow?
I have a nutritionist that has worked with me, and we were using pretty much solid food in 2011, and that did not work for me, so I went to primarily a liquid nutrition, infinite nutrition. So my primary nutrition comes through liquid form, and then I have some solid food that I mix in there to kind of keep the stomach happy with what it normally gets during when I'm not racing.
Do you have to stop to eat, or can you eat on the bike?
I pretty much got to eat on the bike. I'm not that fast.
Tell me what you love about climbing hills.
Actually, I really enjoy climbing hills.
A lot of folks hate hills, but I enjoy climbing hills. I just kind of dig deep and just kind of try and hang in there, and I actually kind of look forward to hills. I may not be saying that 2 or 3 days into this ride, but up to this point, I enjoy climbing hills.
Do you find that this is more mentally or physically challenging?
I'd say it is every bit as much of a mental race as it is physical. I think, it's obviously a challenge physically, but I think if you're not strong mentally, you're not going to make it.
Pushing off from the start line, and just kind of a flood of emotions came over me as I thought about the preparation, the 4 years to get to this point. You spend the first 26 miles unsupported. You're not with your team. You start out on a bike path that gets you in and around all the freeways that are out on the west coast there. Then you go through some neighborhoods before you hook up with your team at 26 miles. And we got up to the glass elevator, which is always a thrill. I think it's a 3,000-foot descent down to the desert floor, and then you spend the next 300 miles crossing the Mojave Desert. Going down the glass elevator, I had a little goal to go a little faster than I'd gone before, so I think I got up to 58 miles an hour and then shut it down, because that's really much faster than I need to be going. Made it through that, got into the first night, stopped at Brawley, the second time station, met the RV crew and the paramedics and the massage therapists, and they did a little work on me there. Feeling pretty good, did a crew change, and we headed off into the night again. When you leave Parker, Arizona, we go into a section that's not my favorite section. You start heading southeast and you really it just feels like you're really in the desert then. And it's just a long, desolate stretch of about 60 miles down to the next time station in Salome, Arizona. We were making a pretty good time. I was around a lot of other riders that I knew that I've raced with before. So I was kind of comparing how I was doing against them. And we pulled into Salome. We checked in a little hotel so we could get off the road and get some treatment from the paramedic and massage therapist. And I think at that time I had ridden 22 hours and gone 374 miles, so a really good first day. Had a pretty good ride into Congress, Arizona. And Congress is the far eastern edge of the Mojave Desert. So you've now crossed 300 miles of the desert and you start beginning some climbs. And there's a climb right outside of Congress called the Yarnell Grade. It's a little foreboding. You see it from the time station in Congress, and you just see the road stretching up into these mountains. For some reason, they had us rerouted another way. We went through a route that I'd not been on before. Went through a little town called Skull Valley. And then there was just a long climb. By now it was the middle of the night, and that climb seemed like it took forever. It was just kind of frustrating. Had a couple of light problems where we had to stop and work on the lights. And I was getting pretty chilly at night. We'd gained quite a bit of elevation, and so we got kind of bundled up, and then we took off out of Prescott. And out of Prescott, you get some pretty significant climbing as you head up north towards Flagstaff. And made the climb. I was struggling a bit on the climb. I was really having trouble catching my breath, and so I was taking a lot more breaks on that climb than I've done in years past. But we rode that mountain range and got through Jerome. We go down to a town called Cottonwood. In Cottonwood, we were doing a crew change. The sun was just starting to come up, not quite dawn yet. But this year there was road construction, so they rerouted us out to the interstate, which I just was not looking forward to at all. It was 37 miles reroute or detour on the interstate, and it was all uphill. And so we got to the interstate, and mentally I was not in a good place to kind of begin that section. 18-wheelers roaring by, 70 miles an hour and throwing up dust and dirt and debris off the side of the road, and you're smelling all their fumes. But it just it was a really tough section, really getting hot. It was still early morning, but boy, the sun was really beating down. But we made it into Flagstaff, again hooked up with the crew there. We did a crew change there, got a massage, and now we're doing regular weight checks, and my weight's been going up. But we took off again from Flagstaff, and this section north of Flagstaff, you have a good little climb right out of Flagstaff, and then you got a really long, gradual downhill that's really, really nice, but then it just goes into a flat stretch that has no shoulders, a lot of traffic, and again, not a favorite section for me. I think I was feeling the effects of not having had much sleep. Because I think at this point in the race, Tuba City is about 600 miles in, and I think I'd had maybe 2 sleep breaks in those 600 miles. Just as we were kind of leaving Monument Valley, the sun was just starting to kind of break over the horizon. In fact, one shot, I remember Wes telling me from the car, he said, Ed, if you can turn your head and do it safely, he said, look over your left shoulder. So the sun was coming up in my face, and over my left shoulder was a full moon that was starting to set, and the sun shining on the rocks and the moon still in the sky was just an unbelievable scene. But we left Mexican Hat, headed to Montezuma Creek. Sun's really getting up in the sky now, but still feeling pretty good. Get to Montezuma Creek, take a quick break there, and then we enter a section that's real barren, but you're approaching Colorado. And then headed into Cortez and was feeling pretty good. Cortez is really the start of the big last climb into Durango. You really have 3 passes that you go up and over to get into Durango. So it's mentally, you're kind of getting psyched up to go to Durango. and we got out on the road, but I'm feeling pretty good because again, I'm looking at time-wise, I've never done this climb on my own, that it wasn't in the dark, and here we are in sort of mid-morning, early afternoon, going into Durango. So Durango was pretty special for me because again, it had been the farthest I'd ever gone before for Race Across the West. And every time I'd gotten to Durango in the past, I always would think about RAAM riders that were coming through. And, hey, they're not stopping in Durango, they're going on. I knew I was significantly ahead of my time. I think it ended up being about 8 hours ahead of the fastest time I'd ever made it to Durango, which was my solo finish in 2012. So felt really good about that, but I think I may have paid a price for that. Looking back on it, maybe went a little too hard. I know we were struggling again with some of the nutrition issues. So we're now at Wolf Creek Pass, and so again, this is about a 7 to 8 mile climb up to the top of this. You're going up and over the Continental Divide. It's the highest point in RAAM. So mentally, it's a big challenge, but it's also, it really feels like a milestone in terms of getting to the top and feeling like, okay, I'm up and over the tallest part of this race. It was a long climb, but a beautiful climb, and anytime I'd kind of get frustrated, I just look typically over my right shoulder and I could see back down into the valley and see from where I had started and get a sense of, okay, I've come a long ways, so you're doing good, so just keep at it. But just mentally, just kind of got to keep the pedals turning. So that was a really neat experience when we got to the summit, and a lot of hugs and handshakes and congratulations to have accomplished that. So I think the whole team felt really good about that. And then we're on our way to Alamosa, Colorado, and this is where the race changed. It was about a 50-mile stretch from South Fork to Alamosa, and the route, instead of going due east, took a turn and was now going to the southeast. And so the wind that used to be directly at my back was now pushing on my side. I just remember it being really, really strong and feeling like I literally had to lean the bike over to the right to kind of stay upright. And we were about 10 miles outside of Alamosa, and I remember thinking to myself, my neck's starting to hurt a little bit. And then I noticed that what was happening was I couldn't kind of look down the road anymore because it was just hard to hold my head up. Schirmer's neck's a condition where literally your neck muscles just completely fail. They no longer can hold up the weight of your head. And so I continued to ride forward, and it just got worse and worse, so that by the time that I hit town and was riding through town and going through these stoplights, I was literally telling Paul back in the follow van, I cannot turn my head left or right, so you are my eyes and ears. You got to tell me if there's traffic on my right or left when I'm coming to intersections. When I go through, you got to tell me if they're clear, etc. And literally my head was just laying on my shoulder. We had 3 different braces that we had brought along with us. One was a very elaborate contraption. So we get on the bike and it's just real awkward and can't really bend over. If I bend over, my head starts hurting, so I'm trying to sit upright with this. And we head out, it's dark, it's cold, it gets colder and colder. We do a crew change about halfway up. We were going up to Mojave Pass. And I just got to the point I stopped and I said, hey guys, I cannot wear this brace anymore. It's just absolutely killing me. I'm not sure it's helping. So again, we had 2 of the braces. I went to another brace, which is basically a cervical C-collar. Again, we're at altitude. I'm having trouble catching the breath anyway. So now I'm trying to breathe with this contraption on the bottom part that rested on my chest. Initially felt pretty good because I thought it was taking the weight off my neck. Next thing you know, I felt like somebody was sitting on my chest, and so I just felt it was even harder to take a breath. But I just felt like we were really struggling at this point, but we were fighting through it. I get back on the bike and I turn the corner out of this little town, and the road just opens up before me, and I can see all the way down this long road, but it's kind of windy, but it's going to the next pass, Kuchara Pass, which is I think a 9,900 foot pass, and that's the last big mountain pass of the Rockies. So I'd seen it on the map before the race. I'd dreamed about it, thought about it, getting up and over Kuchara Pass, but I couldn't race on it because I couldn't bend over. I couldn't get my aero bars. I was having this tremendous pain in my neck. And I rode just a little ways, and I stopped, and I asked for my phone, and I hear them kind of back up away from me. And I asked Wes later, who was driving, I said, Wes, why did you back away from me when you gave me that phone? He said, I thought this was going to be a pretty personal phone call, and maybe we should leave the two of you to have this call to yourselves. And he said the other thing that I knew was different. He said you laid your bike down on the ground. He said it's the first time, because we were about 1,000 miles now, so it was the first time in 1,000 miles of this race that you'd ever put your bike on the ground. You'd either given it to somebody on the crew or you'd leaned it up against the van. He said, but you put the bike on the ground and you sat down. So I get a hold of Nancy.
My phone said Larry Gates, and so I was like, hey Larry, and Ed said, no, it's me. And I said, me who? Because I didn't really expect to be talking to Ed. And he's like, it's Ed. And I said, oh, how you doing? And he said, not good. And I said, what's the matter? And he said, I have Schirmer's neck. And my heart kind of sank, but I knew that, he knew that was a possibility.
Just something about that road, it just kind of all came full circle for me, and I came to this realization, and I just said, 4 years I've been training for this. This is my road. This is the road I want to own and ride, and I can't do it. And she said, so what are you telling me? She said, are you quitting? And quitting never entered my mind. I mean, that wasn't why I was calling her to say I was quitting. I just said, no, I'm just telling you that I can't get to Annapolis in time. And I think everybody thought I was quitting, because I kind of went around to the crew, and again, I know I was emotional, but again, quitting was not in my mind, but I think maybe they felt that. So it was kind of an odd feeling. I said, I just know right now that I want to get up and over this pass. Help me get up and over this pass.
I'll tell you, we had our lowest point was yesterday when he was having a real bad flare up with the neck. Everybody sat around. We talked to him for a few minutes, and like a phoenix, the man just got up and said, "Let's get back on the road and do this."
And I start climbing again. I'm really having trouble catching my breath, so I'm stopping a lot to catch my breath. But it's a beautiful morning, and the media van's moving along with me, the RV's moving along with me, and we're stopping every once in a while and catching a breath and just chatting and keeping going. They're really encouraging me. And then we get to the summit, and the summit was just absolutely gorgeous.
When you see somebody then succeed, there's a celebration that takes place at the summit. It's not the last summit, it's not the last celebration, but for each one of those, there is a celebration, because it's a huge accomplishment.
We get into Trinidad, and again, it was beautiful section, beautiful route, but I was so frustrated because this was the perfect place to be in my aero bars and just really cranking, and I couldn't. I had to sit completely straight up, trying to balance my head back as far as I could to keep it over my shoulders. So we get to Trinidad, pull into the time station. Was in a grocery store parking lot. I said, you know what, guys? I said, I'm not going to ride anymore tonight.
They said, so they would probably just say, well, let's just call it a day and head home. But Ed wanted to make some kind of a milestone, and so I guess they had a group meeting and decided that they would go halfway.
Just kind of a renewed energy in the team, gave me renewed energy. So that was the plan. We're going to ride basically another 500 miles just east of Pratt, Kansas. We would hit the halfway point, and we'd have 1,510 miles. So that was the new goal. So we get to the last day, which I think would have been Wednesday, and we got to ride. I think that day we had to ride right at 110 miles to get to the finish line. As I kept getting closer and closer to Pratt, kind of felt the renewed sense of energy. The finish line was kind of mentally in sight. And I got to Pratt, and I had 16 miles, I believe it was, east of Pratt to the finish line. And so just like, I can do this, I can get there. And then up on a little rise, I see the RV, I see the media van, I see the other auxiliary van. So I said, that must be it. And as I come up, they had a little, ticker tape across the shoulder of the road. They actually spray painted on the road, Garrison Gorilla's finish line. They had balloons. And so I crossed that finish line, and it was really special. While I was obviously disappointed that I didn't get to Annapolis, I knew there was no way I was going to get to Annapolis given what had happened. But I felt good about my preparation, because I felt like I was ready to go to Annapolis. A real flood of emotions that came over me. I liked the fact that the team was able to adjust to the new goal, because sometimes that's what happens in life, right? You can't hit that first goal, and you got to readjust. And so I didn't accomplish RAAM. I think there were 6 people that had Schirmer's neck, the condition that I had. 2 of them did finish. They got Schirmer's neck much closer to the finish line. I think they were well past 2,700 miles.
297 people have completed RAAM. Maybe 500 people have gone to the halfway point in the world. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of bicyclists like myself that couldn't even get to that starting point.
Just as I look back on it, it was an unbelievable adventure. I had the time of my life. All the time I spent training, all the late nights of training, all the early morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, getting out on my bike in the middle of the winter to go do a 250-mile ride, all worth it. Now as I look back on it, I like working towards that goal, and I like the journey towards the goal, because again, we didn't hit the ultimate goal, and I'm sitting here in a room right now, in a room where many days I sat and thought about this race and thought about getting to Annapolis. And I sit here today and said, but I didn't make it to Annapolis, I made it somewhere else, and a different kind of experience. And I just think about all the people that were there for me, my team, that were just phenomenal in terms of their support. And just, it was always, what can we do to help? How can we adjust to help? They just gave me their all, and I can never repay them for what they did for me. It'll be a very special memory for me for a long time, and a story I'd love to share with my kids and my grandkids someday about what their dad and granddad did in the summer of 2014. It was truly an amazing time.